Hello everybody and thanks for joining me. Today I'm using a rather unusual technique from a Japanese fly dresser called Tatsuhiro Saido to create this suspended parachute hackle mayfly emerger. The hook I'm using is a partridge clink armour hook size 12 and the thread I'm using is UTC 70 in light tan. For the loop and the post on this fly I'm using some polypropylene yarn. This is some nice floating yarn. And then my hackle is grizzly, and it helps to have a really nice long saddle hackle for this, and you'll see why when I show you how I prepare the feather. To make the body, I'm using some natural cream and some reddish rusty brown seal's furs. The little tails on this mayfly nymph are going to be some pheasant tail fibres, and finally to rib the body, some stripped peacock herl to give some nice natural segmentation. You might recognise this pattern as one I've done previously, but this hackling technique is very unusual indeed. I've taken a small pinch of my polypropylene yarn. This is maybe a third of the bulk that comes off the card. You don't want it to be too thick because we are going to be doubling it over effectively. And I'm tying that in a few millimetres back from the hook eye, roughly in the middle of the flat bit of the clink armour hook. The whole idea with this is that the body and the thorax are suspended underwater like a nymph that's just coming up to the surface. So I've secured down that loop, making a few turns in front to prop it up. And then here's how I've prepared my feather. You'll see I've stripped all the barbs off the bottom, half the barbs off the middle for a length of 4 to 5 centimetres, and then all the barbs at the top again. And I'm sure you can see where this is going. I'm going to wrap that bare stem up the post, so I'm creating effectively a parachute hackle with no hackle on it. Then that middle bit is going to have the barbs, and that's going to come in the middle, or rather at the top of the fly, and then I'm going to use that extra bit of bare stem to wrap back down again. This is one of very few times that you'll see me use a parachute or gallows tool. Normally I find that it's easier to do it without, but here you need to maintain a really constant tension on the loop, so I do think it's helpful to have that extra hand, so to speak. So I've wrapped up in open turns using that bare stem all the way to the top, and now I'm working downwards with that half hackle, creating a little bit of a bushy hackle, just like you would with a normal parachute. And then once I've reached the bare stem and I've run out of barbs, I'm going to make more open loops back down just in a crisscross arrangement and secure. You can see that that's created an entirely normal parachute hackle, but elevated by about 5 millimetres from the hook shank. I'll reinforce that post with a little bit of varnish and let that dry. The next material to tie in are going to be our tails, so I'm running my thread down to the end of the body, just taking a small pinch of those pheasant tail barbs. I'm going to tie those in, fairly short and stubby, just like a mayfly nymph, and they'll dangle nice and enticingly under the water. The beauty of this hackling technique and this post technique is that you can make it as long or as short as you'd like. Perhaps you only want it a couple of millimetres down, perhaps you want it much further, a couple of centimetres. You just have to adapt the length of barbs that you strip off the feather and the length of your yarn loop. I've secured in my rib, that stripped peacock quill, and now I'm just adding a small pinch of that seal's fur, making a fairly loose dubbing rope. I want this body to be quite shaggy. Underwater the seal's fur takes on a beautiful translucency and glossiness. Looks very natural, like light coming through the insect. Makes it a really attractive pattern. Building up towards the thorax, I've built up a little bit of a taper into the body, and now I'm going to rib. That dark peacock herl is going to give some segmentation effects, but I'm leaving plenty of that seal's fur showing through. Like I said, I want this to be a nice shaggy body. I've taken that all the way up to the thorax, secure it down with a couple of loops, and then break off the excess. The herl's quite brittle, so long as you keep thread tension on, you can just break the excess away. Now, using the rusty brown seal's fur, I'm going to build up a fairly chunky little thorax, again leaving quite a bit of it bushy and long, and whip finish to secure. Here's a view of the finished fly, but don't click away just yet because I'll show you how it sits in the water in a moment. You can see it's got that entirely normal parachute hackle, just suspended above the body, and this is going to hold it really nicely just under the water's surface. Here it is in a bit of water, and you can see from the fish's perspective that looks like a very natural nymph that's just making its break to the surface. Lighting it from above, it's got a really attractive look to it. Do give this one a go. It's an unusual technique but well worth trying. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.